June 2019, Glenelg, the magnificent seaside suburb of Adelaide, the capital of South Australia. I grew up not far from here, but spent a lot of time down here in Glenelg. It's the winter solstice. It's a chilly morning in Adelaide, but we're now heading into longer days. I've flown in from Sydney to attend my school's 40th reunion of my class. Wasn't the longest traveller. One of my best friends, Ken, flew in all the way from North Carolina in the United States. We had a great night on Friday night, catching up with a small number of my class. I had an opportunity the following day to catch up with Brita. Brita and I started at Mitchell Park Primary School together. I had to leave because I wasn't coping very well, even in grade 3 and grade 4, and moved to Westminster, a private, then Methodist, now Uniting Church school, in Year 5. We were a boys' school then and went co-ed in 1978, and Brita was one of a small number of girls who joined a very large number of boys, a very brave group of young women. I had an opportunity to catch up with her on some reflections of her memories of me at both Mitchell Park Primary and Westminster. This is all part of my journey towards acceptance. My book's out in January. So what's your earliest memory of me?
Being a kid when we would have been about 5 or 6 years old and watching you eat sandwiches in a way that I've never seen anyone eat sandwiches before.
What was about the sandwiches?
They were triangle sandwiches, and everyone else, if you had a triangle like that, you'd eat them like that. And you would eat them like this, front on, the point, like this. And I used to think the reason you were so much taller than everyone is because that's why you ate, it's because of the way you ate your sandwiches.
What were some of the later memories?
We were at Westminster together when we were much older, and you were around in Year 11 and we'd bang into each other various times. And my main memory of you is it was always like you were about to be like everyone else, but you were never quite there. And it's funny because we were in a group that was not the mainstream kind of, you know, basketball heroes and really amazing girls who played netball, even though you did play basketball. We were in a group in Year 12 that played bridge in recess time and lunchtime. And in that group, we were all friends. Everyone was a bit weird and they were a bit quirky. But even in that group, you weren't on edge because no one in that group was on the fringe. It was always like you were just about to, like, any minute now, tomorrow you could be mainstream, but you never were, right? And that to me was really interesting, and I only know that in hindsight. The other thing I remember about you is that you had buttons that people would press, and there were a few of them who would press those buttons. And that was really hard, but you never really lost it in this group. But I do remember there were times that people would push a button and you'd react very strongly.
What was important for you and you think everybody else in Bridge in Room 101?
Important for me
about that Bridge group and Room 101?
So, within hindsight, in 1979, you didn't have a concept of nerds. And these were very quirky guys. So some of us were quite socially awkward, others weren't. But in that group, there were three broad types. One group whose other area was a sport, like you played basketball, and Ken played tennis and badminton, and so did Stephen Bedringham. There was another group. There was Karen, who did art, and there was me and Guy and Craig, and we did debating. So we all had another interest. The reason that group was important to everybody else was it was the only place that we belonged. I asked people at the reunion what they used to do at lunchtime. They used to throw hoops, or they'd sit around and talk at lunchtime. We needed that our conversations occurred against the background of bridge games. So there'd always be people who were sitting out, there were people who, because there was always one player who wasn't playing and that player would walk around. I wasn't really sure exactly how all the pairs of players were constructed. I think there was some flexibility in that. But we all relaxed, we all talked, and we were all completely ourselves. And I was the only girl in that group most of the time.
Yeah. How did you feel about being the only girl in it?
Because I felt at one level, possibly I felt a little special, but actually it didn't really matter that I was a girl because I don't think anyone was strongly masculine. They were all comfortable with their masculinity, their feminine side. Everyone was literally themselves. So there were quite a few guys who played sport there. So it wasn't like they had completely no testosterone, there was no interest in that physicality. But within that space, we were just all ourselves. Lots of talk about politics, there was talk about all sorts of stuff.
Looking back, the Bridge Club was the only club that was suspended. What was the story about that, and what do you think about that in hindsight?
It was beautiful. In February 1979, Don Dunstan, who later came out that he was in a same-sex relationship, and he was the person who was behind the decriminalisation of homosexuality in South Australia. He was really famous. He wore pink safari suits, shorts, and everything like that to Parliament. He stepped down in February 15th, 1979, my birthday. That's why I remember the date. And not long after that, there was an election, and the Liberals were elected after quite a long period of Labor. There were only two people in that group who were Labor voters. That was myself and Craig Burke. The rest were Liberal voters. I mean, really, the reality is that I don't know what the basis that we divided was probably what. Although my parents didn't vote Labor, I just decided it was better to be kind of socially whatever it was, a bit radical, a bit crazy. Liberal won the election. Craig and I walked in, and the whole Bridge Club went nuts. They were stamping their feet on the ground, they were shouting, they were carrying on, and it was wild. It was the only time we were wild. The Bridge Club was immediately above the staff club, and all the staff people, they were all sitting in the staff room having their morning coffee, and they must have noticed this thunderous noise. Bob Hayes was sent up to discipline us. He knew that in that room were people who went on to be not only the best students in the school, but the best students in the state. Right? Probably 4 or 5 PhDs came out of that group. Right? Really, really, including me. All these maths guys, all these really serious guys. We were suspended for a week, and it was embarrassing. It was humiliating, but it did not destroy us. We're back after that week. We were back in there. I don't even remember what we did for that week.
No,
I don't think we
were
played.
lost.
I think we were all lost because I know we weren't playing bridge outside.
Yeah. So, last question. You heard I came out, a few months ago. What was your reaction to that, and looking back, hindsight?
Oh, look, first of all, what happened is I was trying to hunt you down. It's the first time I tried to really hunt you down because I knew this would mean the reunion. Then I saw some stuff about some reference to LGBTQI. I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then I saw an article that was talking about you coming out. I was so excited, I was moved to tears. I was working at home that day, and I just decided to spend 15 minutes having a look. And so then I really quickly tried to track you down. I rang your office, you weren't there, they said you're at the cemetery. I just said to the guys, I just found out that he came out. I can't believe this. I was just so excited. And I rang you, and I was so excited, and we had a chat about it, and I was so happy. And I'm going to say what I feel now is not necessarily that I said, oh yeah, I can expect that, but it was not like other friends might say that they've come out and say, oh yeah, I knew that's inevitable. I said to you, you're always like you're just about to come like other, but you were never going to get there. It's not like you were pushing hard to be like everyone else, but I think you were pushing harder than me, right? Certainly pushing harder than everyone in that group. And you weren't like that. That's why you kept on pinging off. But you weren't really sure what it was about you that was different. And it wasn't that you were a nerd, although you're a bit of a nerd. I think you're probably one of the least nerdy people in that group, to be honest. Nerds were great. You could be there, you could be tolerated and not judged. But I don't think you were really full-on nerd, right? I'm sorry.
No.
So you agree?
I agree.
So now I know. In fact, basically everyone else was there except for Guy Morgan, right? So I'm just thinking now, I think that now that was the thing that was different. And so it was just like everything really fell into place. And I was so happy. And I was so happy too because when I'd seen you before at the last school reunion that we caught up with, which is in Sydney, which was maybe about 22, 23 years ago, you were really happy because you'd been married and you're wearing a really crazy, bright, amazing waistcoat. And I was saying, wow, you've really changed. You're kind of more out there, although I knew you were never straight in any kind of sense. Oh wow, that's amazing. You're being more expressive. You're really happy. And you're married, and this woman's really had an impact on you. But I can tell you now, I didn't really feel a bond. So I was talking to you, but I didn't really feel a connection. And it's only now that I realise it. Maybe it's where I was at the time. I was having domestic violence with my son's father, and not long after we came to South Australia, and then to try to get through it, and it didn't continue. Might have been me, might have been you. I knew you were different, but there was still wasn't the thing. But when we phoned, when I talked to you on the phone, you were completely happy. And it was a complete connection. And so yesterday when I saw you at the school reunion, it was beautiful because I knew I could see you the next day. I didn't have to catch up. It's really beautiful when you got up and you said, I was married for 20 years, but now I'm looking for a boyfriend. And it was kind of fine. In fact, in terms of compared to one of the other people, old scholars who got up and said something that was kind of emotional without that person intending it to be. Your comments about looking for a boyfriend, I mean, maybe because a lot of people in the room already knew, it was no big deal. And that says a lot about what's changed over the last 40 years. Because my son went to Westminster and his best friend came out when he was 15. His best friend rang him up and said, had to come out at school and said, oh, hi Sanjay, I want to tell my mum and dad that I'm gay, and have you got any ideas how to do it? And I was listening to him on the phone, and somebody goes, yeah, I reckon you just got to tell them. All right, okay. Comes back 5 minutes later. Yeah, I told them. They weren't that happy, but it's okay. Anyway, they got over it.
Yeah.
But that was, even that was kind of, 2000 and I suppose 2008, something like that. But now it's different. It's different, and which is interesting because we started with a conversation I mentioned about Don Dunstan, and that was 40 years ago that he resigned this year. Okay, so even though we knew about all this stuff, it's not till now that we really have the changes. But I've also had really some guys I worked with. A guy called Gary Rogers opened up the first gay practice in Adelaide in response to a lot of the early stuff that happened around the period with HIV. He and his partner found themselves going to a lot of funerals. He was a doctor. I knew him when he was doing his PhD. We did some stuff together. He was about the same age as me. He was on MasterChef, Gary Rogers and his partner. And it was really interesting at that time just to talk about, because at that time this was maybe, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. So it was well and truly a lot of the stuff about the early HIV drugs had been sorted. But all my life there've been gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, all sorts of folk around me, and it's just an extension of that. It's just now more accepted. Yeah.
Any last comments?
Why did you eat your sandwiches like that? Because no one else ate them like that. Do you remember eating them like that?
I do actually, and
Why?
I think it was important to having patterns in life to survive.
Yep, I thought so. Now I know. Because I do little things like that too. And I remember you were quite deliberate and
Yep.
you do that thing and you were looking at the sandwich.
Yep.
Normally you don't look at a sandwich.
I'm an idiot. Thank you.